All right, so I just want to sort of open up today's lesson with this understanding that family and that parentage and that authority can come in many different ways and can show up in many different ways. And for Romeo and Juliet, they have very different relationships with their parents. So Romeo's parents seem fairly distant and not present at all. Juliet's mother is quite involved, but also submissive, and her father is very authoritative and dominating. And also, to be quite frank, he's extremely abusive and threatens Juliet to essentially marry Paris or else be left on the street. That being said, there are these other figures in this play who have qualities about them that are parental or familial or authoritative. And one of those characters is the friar. And we'll meet him a few different times in the story. And I want you to keep in mind the role that he plays in terms of being both a father of the church, a person of religious background, and a father-like figure to Romeo and Juliet. So a friar is a member of any certain religious orders of men, particularly religious groups, and it's typically associated with the Catholic Church. Based on this, what would you expect the friar to be like? What would you expect him to say to Romeo when Romeo tells him about his love for Juliet? So imagine you're going to Catholic church, you go to the priest, you say, man, I met this really attractive person and I want to sleep with them. What would you expect the friar to say? What would you expect your priest to say? Okay, and now I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, or in theory into breakout rooms, and you're going to talk with your partner, and I want you to consider like the different roles that this friar could take. He knows, for example, that Romeo doesn't have a supportive family or parents who are deeply involved with his life at home, and so in that way, he's somewhat a father-like figure, and he's watched Romeo grow up. In another way, he's a representative of the church. And so you might consider, as a representative of the church, what role might he play? So these are quotes from the friar, and I want you to think about as well what they are saying to us about Romeo. And y'all are going to be in little groups, and I'm going to, each group's going to have a quote to discuss. And you're going to share with the class what you've learned about this quote. So, was thou with Rosaline? So basically, were you with Rosaline? This I pray, that thou consent to marry us today. So I'm praying that you wish for us to be married. A young men's love then lies not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes, meaning that young men tend to be taken away with beauty and lust and sexuality rather than true love in their hearts. Thou trust me oft for loving Rosaline. So you're always making me feel like a kid for having loved Rosaline. And how much salt water thrown away in waste. So basically, all of that crying for nothing. After we come together, and in a real classroom, we would do an activity called character silhouettes. Basically, you would trace each other's bodies on these large pieces of paper. It would be pretty awesome. Unfortunately, we cannot do this here. So we'll improvise. You can do this activity a few different ways. You can draw the silhouette and make edits on a plain piece of paper, uploading this as an image to Canvas. I'll show you what that means. You could voice record your answers to these questions with your partner and also submit this through Canvas using the Media tab when you submit. You can also screenshot the page with the silhouette and edit it like with a pencil on Cami. In any case, you need to submit something that shows me that you and your partner were working together. So pretend this buff person is the friar. He's a representative of the church, and he's also a father-like figure to Romeo. What are some different points that we could make about the friar based on things he says and based on things that Romeo says to him? The questions that I wish for you to answer with your partner, either by drawing on this body, by drawing on a body on a piece of paper, or by verbalizing and uploading as media, are the following. What is the friar's attitude toward love? What does he think love should be and how it should be shown by others? How does he treat Romeo, this young man, when he comes to talk with him? And does he support him in any way? Does he warn him in any way? How is he different to the other characters? So to characters who are not Romeo, how does he act and why is this important? And how does he feel about the behavior of others? So this is where I really want you to think about he's a representative to the church. How does his action, how does his language, how does his role in the church affect the way he views morality and what is right and what is wrong? On the outside of the body, I need textual evidence. So it doesn't need to be like the whole poem. It doesn't need to be a whole part of the act. Rather, just like little things that he said, much like, right, these snippets. So I need 10 quotes on the outside of this body that represent or show or prove what you've written on the inside. Then as we move on to the nurse, I want you to think about a few things. So the nurse speaks in a way that's very colloquial. She doesn't use the same high language that Romeo and Juliet use or that the people of the upper class use. It's more like slang. She uses a lot of sexual innuendos, a lot of exclamatives that are kind of silly to us, but it would be like saying, you know, an explicative. So notice that in her tone. And then I want us to think about her as a person. So someone who deeply understands Juliet more than Juliet's mother, has raised her, nursed her, been by her side, seen her cry, understands this role that she has to play with Paris. And in this scene, the nurse says, "Now afore God, I am so vexed that every part of me quivers. Scurvy knave! Pray you, sir, a word. And as I told you, my young lady bid me inquire you out. What she bade me say, I will keep to myself. But first, let me tell ye, if ye should hear her in a fool's paradise, as they say, as if her a gross kind of behavior, as they say, for the gentlewoman is young, and therefore, if you should deal double with her, truly were an ill thing to be offered to a gentlewoman, and a very weak dealing." So basically, she's talking with Romeo, and she's like, all right, I'm going to tell you that Juliet told me to come find you, but I'm not going to tell you exactly what she said because that's between us two. That's between my girl and me. Why is the fact that she keeps this secret, this confidentiality between herself and Juliet important? What does it tell us about the type of person the nurse is and the type of relationship she has with Juliet? Secondly, she's concerned that Romeo is this player, right? Like he loved Rosaline and all of a sudden now he loves Juliet. So she's making clear, like, I don't fully trust you, dude. And what does this tell us about the nurse's love, again, for Juliet and maybe how she views different men? Consider that the nurse is an unmarried woman of a certain age who probably hasn't had the opportunity to marry because of her social class.